These products are inferior to those that were bought last winter. This section has discussed the relationship between sociology and values. Today's lecture is canceled because the lecturer is ill. Certain chemicals are easily absorbed into the bloodstream. It has been shown that the number of male nurses has increased substantially. The people of the remote village showed me great hospitality. Annual business reports were a fruitful source of information. These products are inferior to those that were bought last winter.
Far beyond his time and continue to influence our lives today. Tesla's story is not just about his inventions. It's about his extraordinary imagination and perseverance in the face of adversity. Nikola Tesla, often overshadowed by his contemporaries, was a prolific inventor and a brilliant mind. He is best known for his development of the alternating current (AC) electrical system, which is still the standard for global power distribution. This system enabled the efficient transmission of electricity over long distances, revolutionizing the way we use energy. Tesla's contributions weren't limited to electricity. He had a hand in the creation of radio, wireless communication, and even concepts that laid the groundwork for modern-day robotics. His foresight in these fields showed a man thinking far ahead of his time. Nikola Tesla's legacy is a testament to the power of innovative thinking and relentless pursuit of scientific discovery. He reminds us that the ideas and creations of one individual can change the course of history. In this presentation, I'm excited to delve into the revolutionary role of antibiotics in modern medicine. The discovery of antibiotics marked a turning point in medical history, drastically changing the way we treat infections. Before the advent of antibiotics, simple infections could be deadly, and surgeries were high-risk procedures. The introduction of penicillin in the 1940s, discovered by Alexander Fleming, changed everything. It became the first widely used antibiotic, turning once fatal diseases into treatable conditions. Antibiotics have not only saved countless lives but also have played a critical role in advancing medical procedures. They made complex surgeries safer and organ transplants possible by preventing and treating bacterial infections. However, it's crucial to address the growing concern of antibiotic resistance due to overuse and misuse. This highlights the importance of responsible antibiotic use and ongoing research for new treatments. In conclusion, antibiotics are a cornerstone of modern medicine, dramatically improving our ability to fight infections. Their discovery and development remind us of the incredible impact of medical research and innovation. What do we call a statement that shows fees of essential services such as electricity, gas, water, and internet? What do we call the person who plays sports to make a living? What is typically
You are in the campus library working on an urgent assignment when your computer suddenly stops working. You try restarting it, but nothing happens. You see a staff member nearby who might be able to help or direct you to someone who can. What would you say? Two students and an IT support officer are discussing campus facilities at university.
You know, I've been spending so much time in the library lately, and while it's pretty good, I wish there were more quiet study rooms available. It feels like they're always booked up, especially around exam season. Sometimes it's hard to find a spot where you can really focus without distractions.
Oh, I totally agree about the study spaces, Liam. And speaking of facilities, I've noticed the Wi-Fi in some of the older buildings can be pretty unreliable. It constantly drops out, which is super frustrating when you're trying to hand in an assignment or watch a lecture. We're paying a lot for tuition. You'd think the basic internet would be really good everywhere.
Thanks for bringing that up, Jessica. We're actually aware of the Wi-Fi issues in the older blocks, and
So we were founded just over 10 years ago when I was in the Royal Academy, a museum in the centre of London, with my 3 children at the Aztec exhibition. I don't know if any of you saw it. I had an older child and 2 younger children, twins, strapped in a pushchair. And one of my children, 3 years old, shouted, and I've never denied he shouted, "Monster, monster," at this statue which looked just like a monster. Had snakes for hair, a big beak for a nose, and I thought, this is fantastic. I've got a 3-year-old that's appreciating pre-Hispanic art. How good can it get? So I bent down and I said, yes, it looks just like a monster. And at that moment, a room warden came over, a gallery assistant came over and said we were being too noisy and threw us out. Wrong family. I was at that time a journalist with the Guardian newspaper, and 2 days later wrote a big piece in the Guardian about being thrown out of the Royal Academy. And what was really interesting was by the end of that day, we had at the paper over 500 emails from other families saying, museums aren't working for us, let's try and make it work. So that's what we did. In The Guardian we set up a campaign, we called it the Kids and Museums campaign, but it didn't really exist. It was just a few pages, we ran loads of stories on it. I began touring the country talking about how to make your museum family friendly.
Citizenship education is an important subject in schools as compared to the past. However, only 1/5 of schools have such courses that provide student right skills and attitudes. In the past, people were reluctant to teach. It is important for students in this changing world. There are still problems in teaching this subject due to lack of commitment and lack of teachers to teach. Criticism about the theory of citizenship education is ineffective, unless schools themselves reflected democratic practices by giving children the opportunity to have a say over decision-making. It suggests that schools are fundamentally undemocratic institutions, and that such a setting cannot instill in children the commitment and belief in democratic values that is necessary for citizenship education to have a proper impact. Citizenship education is one critical element, and students will acquire knowledge of civics, including the principles of democracy and associated local, state and Australian government structure and processes. In addition, students will also learn to participate responsibly and cooperatively in community. Citizenship curriculum is very important for students, but it is neglected by many schools. There are only 1/5 schools introduced this class to campus and allocated less time than other subjects. Moreover, the professor pointed out if given enough time in citizenship curriculum, it will be beneficial to improve students' skills and install positive attitude towards the changing world and tackle the issues such as lack of leadership.
Certainly in Europe and the West, we tend to think of bread as the staple food in our diet, as many proverbs and sayings such as "bread is the staff of life" attest. Yet for the majority of the world's population, the most important staple food is not wheat, but rice, which is the seed of a different type of grass. The earliest evidence we have of rice being cultivated dates back to 8,000 years ago, when rice grains of that period were discovered in a village in China. By around 6,000 years ago, the cultivation of both long-grain and short-grain rice had become well established in China and had just got going in India. The word rice itself, however, is derived from the Aramaic urutsa and came to us by way of Greek and Arabic. In fact, it was the Arabs who introduced rice to their Spanish territories in the 7th century, but it didn't spread to the rest of Europe until much later when, in the 15th century, Spaniards began to cultivate their own short-grain variety at Pisa in Italy.
The heyday of the English landscape garden was the 18th century, and it stood for many things. The appreciation of natural beauty, of course, but also the idea of a civilized life, good taste, one's personal philosophy, and one's social status. Gardens also, though it is hard for us to credit, became expressions of their owners' political affiliations. Until the picturesque style emerged as part and parcel of the Romantic movement, gardens had been strictly formal, laid out with mathematical precision following the Italian and French examples. There then came a backlash against this rigid formality, led by, among others, the poet Alexander Pope. Pope and his allies argued for a more natural nature. Lord Burlington was a major figure in the landscape garden movement, and he was famously influenced by his love of the Italian architect Andrea Palladio, along with the picturesque or romanticized landscapes of Italian classical painting. With these in mind, he scattered his gardens and parks with classical Greek and Roman temples and statues. In other words, he wanted to make the garden look like those paintings.
Dams are huge man-made structures that act as barriers on a river. Today, the main reason people build dams is to produce electricity. They are also built to restrict and control the flow of water in a river. Throughout history, dams have been used to prevent flooding and to irrigate farmland. Dams supply about a sixth of the world's electricity, and they significantly reduce the risk of floods and droughts. They also make water easier to access, especially in desert-like areas, where water is in low supply. There are, however, some negative effects of damming rivers. Many people's homes are knocked down to make space for the dam, and flooding can occur in the reservoir, which is the area behind the dam where water collects. This can cause valuable farmland to become submerged under the lakes. And one particular crop, almond in the US and now in Australia, is transforming the world of beekeeping and bees. What has happened is that something serendipitous came along that people found out, that doctors found out that almonds are good for you, a confection but it's good for you. The almond board got a very aggressive promotion going on for almonds. They actually, I just heard recently, send out sales reps to cardiologists at hospitals to promote the heart benefits of almonds. In a very good promotion of almonds, and it's legitimate promotion because they are a healthy food.
As you know, there has been an unresolved debate as to when and why early humans first started to use fire. However, recent new findings from a study in South Africa have been the talk of the anthropological community. So, what are these findings? Well, prehistoric ash and the remains of burnt bones are evidence that early humans used fire much longer ago than previously envisaged. 300,000 years earlier than believed, in fact. Scientists have found evidence of multiple fires, ash and bones, deep inside a cave, which means it is highly improbable the fires were started naturally. One question that still remains unanswered is why they were using fire. Some researchers are citing the burnt bones as proof that our ancestors cooked the meat, but it has also been suggested they ate the meat raw and then tossed the bones into the fire.
It's been reported recently that some business schools have decided to make changes to students' grades by increasing them by 10%. This means that a C grade automatically becomes a B, and a B grade automatically becomes an A under the new grading system. And the change is retrospective, which means that it applies to all grades that have been achieved since the school's current grading system, which was introduced in 2007, has been in place. Now, there are at least 8 business schools who've changed their grading levels, and they decided to award their graduates higher grades so they would be more attractive in the highly competitive job market. However, changing grades like this has been criticized by the academic and business communities because many people think the grades have been falsely exaggerated and don't reflect the true ability of the student. In fact, many employers realize when a school has made adjustments to students' grades, and so there is no real benefit in doing this. Lifting the grades may even be damaging to the students because employers may believe that the graduates were given the high grades when they didn't deserve them.
The Beehive is the common name for the executive wing of the New Zealand Parliament buildings, so called because its shape is very much like a traditional woven beehive. It's 10 stories high, with the levels becoming incrementally smaller the higher up they are. Scottish architect Sir Basil Spence did the original conceptual design in 1964, but the detailed design of the building was by the Ministry of Works, and they carried it through to fruition. It was opened by the Queen in 1977. When it was built, it was supposed to embody the spirit of New Zealand as a nation, but it's never really had that recognition in the way that buildings like, say, the Sydney Opera House have had. In a way, I suppose the Beehive was, for a long time, seen as an unfortunate hangover from the 1960s, but time has passed, to the point where people's feelings about it have gone through a kind of ironic celebration to real appreciation now.
In small doses, stress can have quite a positive effect. It can make you feel more alive, even exhilarated. I suppose everyone has a set level at which stress becomes unbearable, at which point they cease to function properly. I suppose, too, that it's possible for someone to train themselves to be able to take higher levels of stress by repeatedly putting themselves in a stressful situation, to build up a tolerance for stress. Indeed, some jobs absolutely require this. But stress is a fact of life for all of us, and, as the figures show, its effect is largely negative. Each year, about 6 million people in Britain consult their doctors because they feel stress or anxiety, and it is estimated that at least another 6 million suffer from stress-related illness but do not seek medical advice. Long working hours, fear of losing their jobs, the difficult journey to and from work in crowded trains and buses all contribute to increased levels of stress. Then there are domestic problems, such as a large mortgage on the house, children who want to drop out of school and join rock bands, not enough time to spare to be with the family.
Too many students search for material by going to what they think is the right shelf in the library, finding little or nothing, and then reporting back to their tutor that there's nothing on it in the library. If you have some authors and titles in mind, look them up in the catalogue. They may not be where you think. And look at adjacent entries in the catalogue and on the shelves. The catalogue may lead you to restricted loan collections, reserve stacks, or departmental collections, which may not always be obvious. You should also check the subject catalogue, trying to think of related terms. Other places to look would be the reference shelves and newspaper section, though a problem here is finding
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Molly Webster. Got a minute? The element mercury has been shown to damage the human nervous system. Yet, since 1856, mercury amalgam is the filling dentists have used to repair our teeth. Now, a study in the journal Chemical Research and Toxicology indicates that mercury fillings actually lose their toxic potential over time. Canadian scientists use X-ray spectroscopy to compare new mercury amalgams to those about 20 years old. After 2 decades, 95% of the elemental mercury on the surface of a filling had gone through a chemical reaction. It became beta mercury sulfide, a black-colored solid, which explains why fillings dull with age. And the compound isn't absorbed by the body, which means it can't affect the body the way elemental mercury can. Of course, this study does not settle the question of how potentially harmful a new mercury filling is, but sulfide-rich foods such as coffee, garlic, and onions may accelerate the change from metallic mercury into the safer sulfide. So if you have a new mercury filling, an odoriferous chili dog with a cup of coffee may be just what the doctor ordered. Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Molly Webster.
The Space Shuttle Discovery mission STS-128 is in orbit right now, with some fascinating people on board. Pilot Kevin Ford became interested in flying when he was a kid and read the book Carrying the Fire by Michael Collins, command module pilot on Apollo 11. When he was old enough to take flying lessons, Ford paid for them with money he earned bagging groceries. Mission specialist Jose Hernandez was born in California into a family of migrant farm workers. He spent his childhood shuttling between Mexico and California, working in the fields and speaking little English. But during the school year, his parents, who possessed only third-grade educations, had him and his siblings attend school full-time and help with the work only on weekends. His second-grade teacher in California convinced his parents to set down roots for the sake of the children's educations. In high school, Hernandez was inspired by astronaut Franklin Chang Diaz and set his course on becoming an astronaut himself. The whole crew has great life stories and degrees in engineering or science. Check them out at snipurl.com/STS128.
Sociology policies from the government try to fix social issues. Kids learn their first language easily without any lessons. The library isn't open as long when it's summertime. Private money often pays for job training courses at schools.